We are back. Giants Baseball, Past, Present, and Future. The host, Tim Haller. I'm Ralph Tyko.
Hello, and I'm with the great Ralph Tyko.
Well,
I might be the host,
Alice,
but you're the great Ralph
relative.
Tyko.
Alice is relative. I have my great moments, but great is a little overstated. But I appreciate that, Timmy. I'm with the great Timmy, and I'm not overstating it whatsoever. Good and bad week for you, Giants-wise. Surprisingly, we got a very nice effort out of Mike Moore, and
Matt Moore threw a great game the other night, and I really think
Moore,
that, psychologically, man, that really kind of put them into a little different. They needed that boost, and to come from him is huge. Because we talked about the dynamic of a new guy in the clubhouse and all of those little things that we're not really privy to, but having an outing like that, especially against the Dodgers, I really think has sparked something underneath them. We saw them get out after it last night in their game with the Braves, shutting them out 7-0, and then tonight I think this kid Suarez left the pitch up for Kent to smoke out dead center field, but overall I think the Giants have a little bit more life in their step, as we speak.
So. I want to ask you a question. I try to get as much, never having been a professional player, I try to get as much insight for myself as to what goes on in a player's head. And I want to know why there are some players, Willie was included in this, Willie Mays. He was streaky, good, bad, or indifferent. There were times that he was, and Belt is like that. Enormous streaks both ways. And I want to ask you, as a pro player, were you streaky? Were you consistent? What causes that? Can you address it?
Well, personally, my own performance was pretty steady. I didn't have any really long periods of. I'd maybe go 2 games without a base hit, but then again, I would only do. I'd go 1 for 3, 2 for 4. But I was pretty steady. I wasn't a streaky player. Now there are guys that are absolutely explosive, and then they fall off a cliff for whatever reason it is. And I think a lot of it is mental. I think the game itself is psychologically just so demanding. And, you mentioned Brandon Belt. I don't know what it is with him, but he is certainly a streaky player, both offensively and defensively. I think that what we see with a guy like him is psychologically he'll take his slump with him, his offensive slump, out to the field. But then I look at a guy like
he just doesn't have the concentration. Are there things to do to increase your concentration? Counselors. I remember when I was the Tops rep meeting the late Harry Dorfman, who was a sports psychologist, and the A's had him signed as a coach. When they signed, I don't know if you remember the 4 aces, Van Poppel and those guys.
Sure.
He was down in the low minors working with these guys, and I thought it was very innovative for baseball and for the A's. It was Sandy Alderson, if I'm not mistaken, who, to give him a little credit, the guy with the Mets, who's putting it all together such as it is. Our teams are similar, Timmy, in so many ways. They're flawed, streaky, hard to predict from one week to another. But I wonder if, with Belt, if it could be something that sports psychologists could help them concentrate, help them live in what Dale Carnegie used to say was gate-tight compartments where no matter what was going on around you, you still had to do the things to survive. The kid might be sick, this, that, or the other thing, but you have to have the concentration not to, to focus, because by taking care of your business, you'll be able to take care of the rest of it, the rest of it. I'm just surmising.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I really think, that is one area that hasn't been pursued with such zest as, say, the statistical sabermetric side of things. I work in the mental health industry. I work in psychology, and my perspectives of things are probably different than the common man, because in life, just like in baseball, we have long-running periods of good success and feeling upbeat, etc. And when it comes to a baseball player, just individually, we're dealing with something that's so fragile as the human ego. And, I can attest to this. Baseball players are very insecure people, but they wear their emotions, most of them do, outside of themselves. And what I mean by saying that is, when things aren't really going as well as they'd like them to, they develop this, they compose themselves in a way that is almost like they have an armored, a clink in their armor, but they're sticking out their chest anyway. And I don't know, that's a learned thing from when we were playing Little League. We were told, you're still, and you're still very good, you're still very talented. And psychologically something happens where there's almost like a manic or a bipolar kind of thing with a lot of baseball players. And you don't really you're not privy to seeing what's going on behind the scenes in a clubhouse or when they're at home. But there are a lot of emotional ups and downs. There's a lot of peaks and valleys with baseball players.
Some can take their hitting into the field with them. That's important.
I think absolutely. I think most good ball players don't do that. The guy that I think of, and who was really before my very eyes turning into a MVP caliber type player, as I've seen him grow and develop over the last 6-8 years, is Brandon Crawford.
I knew you.
Brandon Crawford is a guy that might be struggling at the plate, but he does not allow it to affect his defensive abilities. And he's a great example of one of those players that can channel that can put it away or put it aside and not let it affect his defensive play. Because I've seen Brandon struggle over the years. He's a little bit of a streaky hitter too. I think now I'm seeing him being a better, more consistent hitter. But there were periods of time when he would flirt around 290, 300, and then, 6-8 weeks later, he'd be hitting around 245, 250, 240. But it never really has seemed to affect his ability to play defense at the level he plays too. I mean, we're talking, he's a Gold Glove shortstop. And he can save and win games defensively, just as he can do, and he has and does and will do offensively too. He's a clutch hitter. He's a really good guy to have up at the plate with men in scoring position, be it tying or winning runs, or, you need a little bit of an insurance, run or something. But Brandon Crawford is, right before my eyes turning into that caliber of a player. And then you look at kind of the opposite of the spectrum. You look at a guy like Brandon Belt, who you can see when things aren't going well for him. He wears that. He displays that on his face, his body language, so, there are guys that rise above, and Brandon Crawford is one of those guys. I can't wait for another 10 or 12 years to watch, and when it's time for Crawford to hang it up, what his body of work is going to show, because he's really, before all of our very eyes, he's becoming a great player. And, that's exciting. I love that.
Right. We never had a show when Omar Vizquel was the shortstop. And for some reason or another, I listened to a lot of ball on the radio from all over the country. Just a lot of different sports, a lot of different games. Everybody brings up Vizquel when they're talking about guys of just not this era, but maybe 5-6 years ago, as being the Ozzie Smith of his time.
Oh yeah.
Somebody said that it's Ozzie Smith without the backflip. And we got to see him out here the last few years of his career. It was almost unbelievable.
He was something else. He
really
was special. Omar Vizquel, I was fortunate enough to play against him as a minor league player, and he was sort of similar kind of player. And as he got older, even later in his career, I'm talking about 8 or 10 years into his career, did he finally figure out a way to really become an offensive, player as well as an incredible shortstop. When we compare shortstops too, I even think he was better than Ozzie Smith, because for whatever reason he had an incredible instinct. Not that Smith didn't, but I think Omar Vizquel was just a little bit better than Ozzie was. And the thing about Vizquel is, he had that Latin flair as well. Those Latin players, they have something a little bit more, something relatable to this, a little bit of that chutzpah.
Yeah, a little like Chico.
And so there was that along with, just his just bare knuckle ability, but he made it look even that much more graceful or flashy or whatever adjective you want to, put onto it. But Vizquel was
persistent arm. He was like watching Pancho Gonzalez play tennis. Fundamentally, absolutely perfect. And he could make that that barehanded play like nobody I ever saw. It was a privilege watching him, and I'm glad to get some confirmation that he was as good as I thought he was.
We were lucky enough to have Uncle Bill on a couple of weeks ago, my Uncle Bill Haller, and even to this day, he raves more about Omar Vizquel as being the greatest shortstop he'd ever seen. And he got to see him quite a bit. And, I think that his, whatever his evaluation on a ball player is going to be pretty accurate.
He got to see up close and personal guys like Belanger on a regular basis.
Campaneris. Campy. Even guys like Trammell and Ripken, who were great in their own abilities and their own rights. But Aparicio was probably another great shortstop, as in that era of
Should
50s,
Trammell
60s.
and Whitaker be in the Hall of Fame, in your opinion?
Well, I think from a statistic standpoint, you can't overlook what they did from just a number standpoint. I do. I believe that they both deserve to be in there. Maybe even more so for Lou Whitaker, because for a second baseman, he put up some incredible offensive numbers for a second baseman. And that's why I know that in any given year now, in the next year or two, we'll see Jeff Kent get in. Jeff Kent was a phenomenal offensive second baseman. And I think he had 6 or 7, maybe 8 years consistently, straight years of driving over 100 runs. And the only other guy that played second base that had that kind of number, I want to say it might be Honus Wagner or Greenberg, Hank Greenberg. But I can't remember the great second baseman that had all the RBIs. But it was,
I'm blanking.
But that was back in the 40s, and Kent surpassed that guy. There's a number of consecutive years with 100 plus RBIs. Bobby Doerr, no, it wasn't Bobby Doerr. I want to say,
you would think I'd be able to pronounce his name at 60 years of being a baseball fan, but no.
You'd think so, but,
You would.
If you ask,
I'm as good as I can be, as good as I can get.
That reminds me, I used to love listening to Harry Carey. Harry Carey was one of the greatest announcers, as flamboyant and as knuckleheaded as that guy was. I'll tell you what, if you ever had the opportunity to listen to him on a consistent basis or listen to him on WGN back before of all the big MLB stuff and all of that, WGN, of course, was able to broadcast their games nationally along with TBS or
right.
The Turner Broadcasting System. But Harry Carey would do this, and it was because he had to have been bored and or drunk, because we know that he liked to get into the hooch when he was broadcasting during the course of the game. And he would do this thing every day of saying guys' names backwards.
He had to be playing around. I don't think you could.
He was goofing off, and his name backwards is Oker. That would be Tyko or Oket. He would say your name backwards. And when he got to names like Andres Galarraga, or Mark Grzelanic, and he would make the attempt of doing their name backwards, it was even funnier than if he was just doing a guy's name who had a regular, normal last name. It was hilarious. And I think the one thing I recall most out of Harry Carey was that they used to have the Pepsi hat cam. So Pepsi Cola in the 6th or 7th inning would, the camera people for WGN would scan the stands looking for different and unique types of hats. And there was a young man, probably 10 or 12 years old, with a sombrero. He was wearing a sombrero at this Cubs game, a day game in Chicago, and just like that, at the drop of a dime, Harry Carey says, "Oh, would you look at that kid? He has on a sombrero. Somewhere outside of the ballpark, there's a donkey wandering around, wondering where his master is." And I think that, to me, was, and he used to do some incredible stuff, but that, just the quickness and the wit of which he just was able to throw that out there. To this day, I still laugh about it because I can still hear him in my head. Things like, that wouldn't even have been a home run in a phone booth, a high pop-up right at home plate. Just went straight up. Just these lines that he would just come up with were hilarious. And to have to bear announcing year after year with such mediocre clubs, great players, but teams that couldn't win. You got to see guys like Dawson and Ryan Sandberg and Leon Durham and some great individual players, but they never could win.
You can go back to Banks,
oh yeah,
Billy Williams and Santo. And the Mets won in '69 when the Cubs made their their best attempt and fell short in that era. So I can't really complain, but I feel sorry that Banks Santa, those guys never lived to play in the World Series. That's too bad, really.
Well, it really is, because that's what they play for. They try to play for a championship,
right,
and to win.
Right. And that means more to them than the money. I mean, when it really, at the end, when it comes down to it, like they've been honoring the '86 Mets. Can't imagine what that means to these guys come back and 30 years after they're retired, they still get this fan adulation. Tell me about that, what it means when X number of fans, 20,000, 30,000, are screaming. What does that mean to a player?
Oh, it's amazing, really. I mean, because the jump from AAA to the major leagues is dynamic. It's ginormous. It's huge. Because you're going from a ballpark and a facility that maybe any given night can have 2,000 to 15,000. But when you come to a major league ballpark, you've got now at least three tiers of stands that will pack in at least 35 to 40,000 fans. So right away, you're looking at maybe 2, 3, even 4 times the number of fans in a major league city than you've ever played in front of before. So that is a distraction in itself. I mean, that's just overwhelming for a ball player. And we talked about the psychology earlier of the game and what that does to a guy. A lot of guys, man, they really love it and they feed off of it. And other ones want to go and hide behind, a monument in center field at Yankee Stadium because they're so nervous and they're so, timid because of that, You're in front of God and everybody when you're going to Major League ballpark.
And
so,
you just hit upon something that some players can play in that big city atmosphere like New York, and some people can't, whereas it's a common denominator playing anywhere in a Major League park is tough. What have you heard about New York, playing in New York, compared to, say, San Francisco, for instance?
Well, I think that the fans, as educated and as involved they are with each of their respective clubs, I think the Yankees fans are harsh. They can be pretty brutal, even to the home kid player, even to the guy that, plays for their team and he's not doing well. You can hear sometimes a lot of the stuff that comes out of the mouths of fans at Yankee Stadium. And it's brutal. It can be absolutely like, butcher knife right through your heart.
Philadelphia's worse, Timmy.
Philadelphia is worse, and Boston isn't far behind. Now, the Giants fans are a little bit more white-collar. They're a little bit more sophisticated. I'll give it to them in that regard. But you can get into certain sections of that ballpark, and you can hear them get, they can get a little spicy with their language too.
With the stick, they certainly could.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah,
kind of a new demographic, what with the money and the corporate tickets and this, that, and the other thing. But wow, they got a little rowdy from now and again.
Yeah, so there's a different demographic, I would say, in terms of the type of fan, certainly in different cities. I know that the LA fan is a lot different than the San Francisco fan. I know that the Kansas City fan is a lot different than the Chicago White Sox fan. And some guys can adapt really well and melt perfectly into that scenario, and other guys would prefer to be either in a big city bright lights kind of scenario, or like a Reggie Jackson, or be very content with playing in an Arizona or an Anaheim or something like that, where there wasn't such the exposure.
Right.
And it just depends on the individual. Yeah.
Roger Maris hated New York and wanted out as quickly as he could. for a number of reasons, of course. I think back to Ed Whitson, who was a Giant for a while and played in New York and did horribly for the Yankees.
Yeah, he really did. And he was a great talent. He pitched really well with both the Giants and the San Diego Padres before heading out to New York. And, some guys just really do well in that situation and others aren't aren't geared for it. But you look back in the history of the game, you look at a guy like Mantle, who came from a very rural area of Oklahoma, or even a Joe DiMaggio from a developing city like San Francisco to go to New York and have the careers that they had. Obviously,
he was a fisherman's son, and it wasn't even San Francisco at the time. He was born in like Martinez or way out there. And when he was asked for a quote when he came to the Yankee camp for the first time, he thought a quote was a soft drink. So he was terribly undereducated, but yet he was a reader and he devoured written material and became quite erudite and quite articulate. So it isn't.
And I think, Mantle went the other direction, And Mantle went the other direction. He went to liquor and he allowed, he could do what he had to do out on the field, but he drank, just abusively. And that's what allowed him to get through that period of his life, or even after he drank a lot too. But Mantle was hurt, and he was in a place that was really foreign to him, and so he opted for booze as opposed to, DiMaggio trying to refine himself.
Right.
And two different types of the personalities, two different types of players, but both great in their own right, just incredible.
Timmy, the baseball community is basically a drinking community in terms of if they're going to change the consciousness, it wouldn't be pot. But basically, it's a lot of alcohol going on. I mean, Don Newcomb had drinking problems way before Mantle. He wasn't the first one, and I want to say too that Mantle didn't drink as much when he played as after he retired. He drank, but not to the excess it was portrayed, or he never could have had the numbers that he had. Unless, of course, that he would have had even better numbers. He would have been a 340 hitter. I remember Stengel saying when he first came up that Mantle was cobbed with power, and he saw them both. So.
Yeah, and he played without legs, too. Really, Mickey Mantle was, as great as he was never really that healthy physically.
Right.
His knees and his legs were shot.
His knee.
Yeah, when he hurt his knee really badly. And, of course, back then they didn't have the same technology and the same medical resources that they have today. Who knows what would have happened if he was able to have a surgery that would have repaired the damage he had done to his knee.
It could have been almost non-invasive arthroscopic surgery instead of cutting him open for making these big scars and what have you. Yet, not in his defense, but trying to describe, he wasn't a big rehabber. I mean, he didn't really Willie, on the other hand, he didn't take good care of himself, and Willie, on the other hand, stayed home, and he wasn't a boozer. I mean, makes a big difference.
Right, and he was more of a recluse, right? He enjoyed, or he chose the privacy. He didn't really care for that exposure, if you will. He didn't want to be, in the limelight, off of the field. So
Series 2, a lot of it is luck. Remember in that World Series where it was Willie Mays that hit a fly ball that DiMaggio was called him off at the last moment, and he pulled up, hit the drainage pipe. Just as fate would have it, it could have been Mantle that hit a ball, and Willie hit the drainage pipe. So much of life is fate, and no matter what happens to you, it's what you do after that happens to you, good, bad, or indifferent. How you deal with it when you're on the upswing. Because if there's a downswing, how are you going to deal with that? How do you treat people when you're on the upswing? And how do you expect to be treated when you're on the downswing? So a lot of it is personality. A lot of it is what Mantle saw his dad do, this, that, and the other thing. There's a major theory, and Tony Castro, who wrote a book about Mantle, and Peter Golenbach were on a show together that I hosted, and they talk about the fact that that when Mickey first came to town, he had been already in love with Merlin and this, that, and the other thing. When he first came to New York, he fell in love with a woman who was basically the love of his life, and his father would quote the father, "She's not our kind," and basically forced him, because he was such a submissive to, he idolized his father and this, that, and the other thing, but he forced him into a marriage that he regretted for the rest of his life and didn't do well by his wife, and had this affair for years and years with the love of his life, and then his dad died. There's all kinds of, at an early age, and the male members of his family all had Hodgkin's disease in their 40s, and he really never expected to live as long as he did. He joked that if he knew he would have lived this long, he would have taken better care of himself, kind of an old joke, but
Sure.
Yeah, he was complicated. Let's just put it that way.
Right, and just like anybody else in our world, in our lives, that's right. We backtrack all the way to where we started this conversation about the psychology of the individual playing the game of baseball. Everybody is different. We get the privilege to see them 2 or 3 hours out of a day in their lives because of the exposure that they get and the way this game of baseball has just overtaken our culture. But 40 or 50 years ago, you didn't have the technology of television and all the other things that go along with just having the media with these guys 24/7. You were getting guys that would run with these players on trains, and the traveling, media guys, the writers, the reporters that would live with these teams for the season. And then, of course, they would write about them every day, and it would appear in that particular paper that they were working for. But got to remember, these guys are, they're human beings. They're just like, Susan that works at the bank, or Bill that works at, the electrical store, or, they're regular people that have a gift and an ability, a talent to play a sport better than anybody else. But at the end of the day, they're soulful, spiritual people, just like you and I. And we overlook that because they're on the stage. But when the lights aren't on and nobody's out on that field, they're just like you and I. They really are. Now they might have a little bit more money and they might have the exposure and they do their twittering and all of those kinds of things. but they're just regular human beings, you know.
And they have relationships, and they have kids, and they have parents to take care of, and
families and everything.
And people hocking them for tickets and this, that, and the other thing, which I'm sure still goes on.
All the time.
Right. Remember
you know,
me?
it's constant.
7th grade. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's more than anything, Timmy. It's a job. Right.
At the end of the day, it is, and they're fortunate enough to be able to do this better than anybody else and make a lot more money than anybody else because they're so good at it. You know, so, but we're talking about less than 1%, less than, 1% of 1% of 1% that get an opportunity to play Major League Baseball. Because if you go out and you watch, if you go to a park or you go to a Little League field, there's tens of thousands of kids playing the same sport, and most of those kids would, if you were to ask them at a particular time of that day, what do you want to be when you grow up? They'll tell you they want to be a Major League Baseball player.
Absolutely.
But ultimately, the statistics and the numbers, they fall off, until, they're 18, 19 years old and they show a certain ability, an athletic ability, a psychological ability. My dad used to call it intestinal fortitude. You've got to have some courage and guts to play the game of baseball day in and day out, because it isn't your typical 8-to-5 job, and it isn't for everybody. And if you have a bad night or two, then you'll hear it from the fans, and they'll write about it in the newspapers, and you'll hear about it on television if you're not going good. So you have that to contend with as well. And, it's not an easy
when you
gig.
are going good, there's the pressure to keep it going, too. It's not.
Absolutely,
it's not
because if you drop back, then they're going to go, oh, what's wrong with this guy? And why is it, the one thing about baseball, it's like this kid, Gary Sanchez, the kid that came up with the Yankees, who was he's an inferno. This guy is so hot, it's not even, nobody's done anything like he's ever done, ever, in the history of the game. To come on like he has over the first 25 games of his major league career or whatever, or whatever the scenario.
What a boost it is to his team. You talk about psychologically. Teixeira is even getting going, and talking about this kid as the second coming, and it's beautiful.
It's wonderful and it's fantastic, but at the same time, collectively we have to go, okay, it isn't real. I mean, it's real because it's happening, but it's not going to last forever. A guy is going to do this until the opposing pitchers start to figure him out a little bit, and he gets a little more tired, because you cannot maintain a pace like that over 162 games. I don't care if you're Mickey Mantle. Mickey Mantle couldn't do it. Willie Mays couldn't do it. So what he's experiencing is a combination of, yes, he's a very gifted physical athlete, but psychologically he's in this zone right now, and we all have to keep in mind it isn't going to last forever. And when he goes through a 0 for 20 slump, then everybody's going to say, oh, he's just another, you have to be realistic about it. We get so excited about, it's the next Mays, or this guy is the next Thurman Munson, or whatever we want to label them as. That pressure in itself, when they start to read about, this next Koufax. I remember they said that about Clayton Kershaw. He's surpassed Koufax. If you're gonna, I would rather have Clayton Kershaw start the first game of the World Series and then Koufax after him. I mean, that's how great Kershaw is. But what a burden it is to have the media put a label on somebody like, saying that this guy is going to be the next Ernie Banks. That's that's not helpful. It's hurtful. And these guys can't just be themselves, who they are. So psychologically it's not it's not an easy thing to be able to be a Major League Baseball player.
Now, I'm going to ask you about the added pressure of playing professional baseball and being the son of a former Major League Baseball player, a successful Major League Baseball player, a damn good Major League Baseball player, and now you're in, what was your initial team, Timmy?
Bluefield, West Virginia. I was there for 3 days.
All right. Did you hear anything about your dad in the 3 days that you were there, or was it the next somewhere along the line coming up? You can't hit like you in a minor league park. You ain't never going to be another Tom Haller. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Did that?
You know what? I started hearing that stuff when I was 9 or 10 years old, and I heard it from the kids playing sandlot ball. You know, you're never going to be as good as your dad.
Parents, I little league.
Oh yeah, I'd hear it from other parents. I'd hear it from the guy at the bank, you know, at the local bank in San Mateo. I heard it all the time.
For a little league parent to scream that at a kid.
Even the coaches that I played for, not against, but the guys that I played for, say, you'll never be as good as your dad. And I don't know what it was, but I had this ability to turn that off. I couldn't allow that, as big as and grotesque as it was and difficult, to affect me. At an early age, I knew I was a different type of player. I didn't have his body type. I had different skills and strengths that he didn't have, and he had greater strength. You know, he was a power hitter. I was a switch hitter that was smaller and fast and quick. He was a 6'5", 230-pound catcher. I was a 6'1", 185 pound second baseman.
I didn't realize he was that big.
He was a moose. That guy was massive. You know, just his hands. You know, and I've got pretty big hands, but his hands were twice the size of mine, and it was just amazing. They were just these bear claws, these mitts. But you know, I had to hear it from when I was 9 years old all the way to the day I was done playing baseball. And if I were to have allowed that to really get to me psychologically, I would never have been able to do the little bit that I was able to do. I know guys that I played with and against that are sons of major league ball players that greatly affected them. You know, that case in point, Lenny Gabrielson was a teammate of my father's with both the Giants and the Dodgers. He played with the Cubs and the Atlanta Braves as well. He was a left-handed power-hitting outfielder with great promise. Went to the University of Southern California, and he grew up in Oakland, California. He went to Oakland Tech High School. He became really one of my dad's dearest and closest friends. And when they bonded and became friends, well, our families became close and very friendly. And here's an example of, he has his oldest child, Randy, was a ball player, loved playing baseball. He was a pretty good ball player in his own right, but he just couldn't get over that hump. I mean, he went to USC and he played a couple years of NCAA Division I baseball. But I think that the pressures, the pressures too, of trying to live up to the legacy of your father. Gary Davenport. Gary's a great example of a guy that really didn't let a whole lot of that get into his head, you know, but, you know, it's hard enough to try to play baseball at that level. But it's harder to play that baseball at that level and be the son of a player and be the son of a guy that played at that level and was good. You know, because you're going to
need their dad's abilities, like Griffey's an example.
And Bonds and Billy.
Oh yes.
But you're just looking at a couple of 2 or 3 guys. Brett Boone, Aaron Boone, Bob Boone's sons. It can't be easy. It's not easy. It wasn't, when I look back now in retrospect, I put up with a lot of crap. I did. But I loved the game more than I let that get to me. And people started to recognize and respect me for who I was as opposed to being Tom Haller's son. And I think that just had to do with the way my grit and the type of ball player that I was.
And it helped, too,
so,
that you played different positions.
Well, for me it did. And not everybody can do that either. Not everybody can bounce one night, play a week at second base and then play 3 weeks at shortstop and then another month at third base.
No, I mean,
not a lot of guys could do that.
I didn't mean that, Timmy, but that's another story. Your versatility is another story. I mean, it made it a little easier that you didn't play the same position as your dad.
Well, and I think in a lot of ways it did, but now when I look back, I was not as big as my dad, obviously, but I'll tell you one thing. I was a really good catcher. I was a damn good catcher. But because of my ability to run, and the input that my father gave me as well as other guys that he played with, they thought it was in my best interest to be an infielder because the wear and tear on a body as a catcher is overwhelming. And as good as I was as a receiver and the defensive aspects of catching, which were really very instinctive for me. But it wasn't until I was probably a sophomore in high school at 15 or 16 years old that I started to play third base because these coaches and my father and everybody else said, you're gonna just ruin your legs if you do that. And it took me a while to transition to be a decent infielder. But it was genetic. For whatever reason, I love to put that gear on and get behind a plate and call a game. There was something special about it for me. And because of my pedigree, I was able to do things that guys, I was just able to do things better and differently than the other guys that were catching too in my league or wherever I played. I mean, I was in Little League, I was the catcher. For 2 years, I played Little League baseball in San Mateo, and I was an all-star catcher. And that was it was so natural for me. And I think a lot of it was that I invited it, I embraced it because I was the son of a catcher. And I was quick, and I was smaller, and I was nimble, and I was a tiny mini athlete, and the gear was always a little too big for me, and, it would bang around on me and everything, but I was a little beast behind the plate.
And you devoured the game off the field too. I mean, you devoured your dad's knowledge. I mean, you just listened to it. You listened well.
And then at my age now, at 53 years old, and the wonderful and abundance of memories that I have. My dad, he was what I was as far as baseball went. But there was a side to my father too that he taught me the game of baseball, but he also taught me a little bit about life and how to treat people and how to respect oneself so that we could respect others, how to love and to serve other people. He taught me things that aside from baseball are incredible, just wisdom-filled lessons that surpass 10 or 12, 20 or whatever years you're playing or you're involved in the game of baseball, but apply to life. And, those are the things that I think about now is are the things that he taught me to live in this world that we live in and to get along with the people that we're here with. It far surpasses anything that he taught me regarding the game of baseball. And that's where my level of blessings blows through this stratosphere, because he taught me things that had nothing to do with baseball, and at the same time that was the foundation of it all. And
well, baseball's a microcosm of life. So when you say he taught you things that had nothing to do with baseball, in a sense they do, because the people stuff has everything to do with baseball. So,
it absolutely does. I was really refreshed earlier in the week. I was watching MLB channel, and for the first time in a long time, or I hadn't even heard it in forever, Jim Bowden, who was a general manager with, I believe, the Cincinnati Reds and the Baltimore Orioles, Jim made a statement. It was a show with Brian Kelly and all of the sabermetric stuff and the statistics, et cetera, and the evaluations of players now. And Jim Bowden said something that is profound, but probably nobody heard it but maybe me. And that was, at the end of the day, all of this is great, but if you don't have baseball is a relationship sport. And if you don't develop relationships, none of these statistics would even matter. And they don't have an odometer for the developing healthy and strong relationships. They don't have a graph for that. They don't have a formula for that. And I thought to myself, you know what, that's about life in general, relationships. We have to get along with not only ourselves, but everybody in our lives. And it doesn't even matter who it is, if it's the checkout person at Lucky Foods, or if it's, the McDonald's cashier, whoever. You've got to be able to have we have to have a self-dignity and a self-respect to get along with the people that we live with and treat them the way we want to be treated. And they never talk about that on the Major League Baseball channel or on KNBR. They want to thrust all these statistics and, great players and this and that, but at the end of the day, we're all human beings. And we've got to love each other, because none of it would even matter. We wouldn't be able to enjoy this game of baseball if we didn't have a sense of self-love and love for one another. We wouldn't. We get down to the brass tacks. Jim Bowden put it great. He said it's about relationships, and our ability to get along or not to get along will dictate whether or not you will win in life or not. And these are things that you just don't hear every day, because it's about money, and it's about, recognition and fortune and all of these things, but we can't take any of that with us. What we leave behind are the memories that we left, for others to hopefully have admired enough to instill in themselves and their families' lives too. And that's what it's about.
That holds for whatever you do in life. So anybody listening out there to this man, soak it all in. We're talking baseball, and that's basically the candy store of the world, and this, that, and the other thing. You are so deep, and you transcend all of that, and it's a pleasure to be on with you.
Well, you know why I'm this way, Ralph? It's because of people like you who are genuine and sincere about what they're about, and they go about it without hurt. My credo is do no harm. We can't. I love that. I remember the bumper sticker. We do not want to subject somebody to an opinion or a feeling that we have, and we want to make sure we don't hurt anybody. A wonderful thing about human life is we all have our own opinions and we all have our own philosophies. But I do not want to ever get into an argument with somebody because I think differently than they do. I can't do that, because then we aren't living together peacefully in harmony as we should, because everybody is different.
It's funny, I put a little notation on the website under the description of what we're about, and I said that our hosts on the Comfortably Zoned radio network have opinions without being opinionated.
Right.
I thought but that sums it up. Every one of us, or every one of you guys, are that way. So delighted to have you and all of the other guys in this network. It's going terrifically.
I'll tell you what, Ralph, you have developed and built something that's really special with your sight, your foresight, and your ability to put this whole Comfortably Numb network together. It's really comfortably zoned. Well, I'm comfortably numb.
I'm the numb one.
But we're comfortably zoned. You know, I mean, what we're doing is we're people getting together and sharing our experiences and doing it in a way that is really it's refreshing.
And if you check it out, if anybody out there wants to check out these programs, every one of them, every one of the people that I have on have one thing in common. They have passion for what they do. And you wouldn't know our ages to listen to us. We're not a bunch of old battering folks. We're looking towards tomorrow. Most of the shows I do, the baseball shows, we're really into the minor leagues. Who's coming up? On this show, we talked to Gary Davenport and what have you. It's not the past. We look back. We love the past. We're in the present, but we look to the future. And some of us are older than you might think.
Well, and you know what, Ralph? We can learn so much from the past, good and bad.
Right.
You know, and if we reminisce about when things were really good, maybe we can instill in ourselves that, you know, things really aren't as bad as maybe when they're bad. Some of it's really bad. I mean, look at our country right now and the fighting that's going on between two political, absolute, complete bozos, trying to become the leader of the free world.
It's very scary. It's very scary.
It is.
And you're going to get the lesser of two evils, and that is something I never wanted to see happen again. I didn't vote for Obama because I thought he was the lesser of two evils. I was impressed with him. I'm impressed with his charisma. But, you know, there's an awful lot of stuff. We got a war. There's been war all 8 years. He drones. He fracks. He sold out the GMOs to Monsanto. It's not food that his kids are going to be eating ever. It's food that my kid is going to be eating. And, you know, it's not just me. It's we the people, and we the people have a system that's broken, and it desperately needs a third party. And I'm not going to use this as a
political platform,
right?
Yeah.
But I like Jill. I like Jill Stein, and I like what she stands for, and I think she'll continue the Bernie movement. We're going to get Hillary, and she needs to be watched. And
like a hawk, you know, like a little, like it when you drop your kid off at daycare, you know, you got to do that with Hillary.
Oh, you got to have a nanny cam in the bathroom with her. I mean, that's just
absolutely. Even in the bathroom, you don't know what the hell's going on in the bathroom either.
No, I don't care what's going on in the bathroom. But what I'm just saying, she needs coverage. She needs accountability.
She needs coverage. Yeah, kind of like Ronnie Lott trying to cover a wide receiver. You know, you're exactly right, and they got to keep an eye on her because it's a kid, a little kid out of control, and we got to keep every bit of eyes and ears on.
There to think we're getting, you know, I'll say this: I'm certainly not a Trump person, but I'm certainly not a Hillary person. I'm more afraid of what Hillary has done and will do than I'm afraid of what Trump says, because they're empty words until he God forbid he get elected, he'd have some people take him over, they'd sit him down, the CIA would come in, they'd slap him around a little bit, and they'd say, this is how it is. you drive the bus, but we determine the route. Now, with her, she's got enough money and power, and where you can get Slick Willie can walk over to the Attorney General's plane and knock on the door and say, "May I come in and talk about my grandkids with you?" And people go, "Oh, that's okay." And Sally Wasserman Schultz can just resign after taking away the primary from Byrne, basically stole it. It came out, and they don't say, "Let's have a mulligan. Let's do it again. This is wrong. We'll delay the election till December 8th, and we'll have another primary." Wouldn't you think that would happen in a democracy when it's proven that they turn? It's sickening. It's absolutely sickening. So, if you have any other questions to ask me about that, I'm shy. I can't say what's on my mind.
And it's beautiful because this is really what, this is the core of what we're about. We're human beings that have an ability to express ourselves, and we have the freedom to do so. And that really all comes from, just fundamental in nature, natural things like baseball,
Right.
Because I would, in this situation, I don't want to hit and run here. I'd rather bunt the guy over. Okay, well, one guy wants to sacrifice and the other guy wants to hit and run. Are either one of them wrong? Probably not. It's just a different approach. And this country just needs to rediscover themselves and re-embody their American patriotism and what made us so great, and to get away from a lot of this egotistical personality stuff. And it's not a one-man or a one-woman show. It's a group of people trying to get by the best that we can. And we've gotten way off track.
Oh, yeah. And I'm afraid, I'm afraid for the future.
I'm afraid for the kids.
I'm afraid for the ecology. We don't have long until we're going to reach a point where the damage is irreversible. The only thing we can hope for is increased knowledge, because computers are getting so much better, and computers beget knowledge. You learn one step, and then it takes you off in 300 different directions. And so there might be...
but before we can do any reparations, any repairs, any fixes with the economy or the environment or anything like that, we have to repair humankind. And unless we realize that first and foremost, then all that other stuff isn't going to matter. If we can't be able to get along with each other, then all that other stuff won't even be a consideration. Because, and the bottom line here is how we treat each other and how we're going to coexist. Because if we can't do that, it doesn't matter if there's sludge in the river and there's toxins in our air or whatever it is, because we're going to be fighting each other. And until any of this ever occurs, we have to restore and repair mankind. End of story.
Okay. Well, you're in the southern part of the state. There's a former Bad News Bear. His name is David Pollock. He's been a guest on these airways before. And he was a kid playing with Walter Matthau. He's a congressperson or a state senator in Southern California, and his whole shtick is ecology. And this guy's on his way up. His name is David Pollock. If you look for him in Southern California, he's got a campaign going, and he's going from one thing to another. But a great guy and a former baseball guy on one way, one level or another. The Bad News Bears. Timmy, this has been terrific. I really enjoy your company, as you know. We'll get
it's been great. I'm sorry Patrick couldn't join us tonight, But we will have some surprises for this coming weekend. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, Ralph, but you're going to be out of pocket for about, 2 weeks?
We'll arrange it that we'll have the show. I can take this. It's a traveling thing. We can do it on the road. No problem whatsoever.
Beautiful. I'm looking forward to it.
Next week?
All right, Ralph.
Same bat
time, same bat channel.
All right, man. Be good. And,
all right. Be well, everybody.
All right.
Keep loving each other.
Everybody.
All right.
Over and out.
Bye-bye, man.
We are back. Giants Baseball Past, Present, and Future. I'm Ralph Tyko. My co-host is Tim Haller. Sometimes he's the host, I'm the co-host. Sometimes I'm the co-host, he's the host. You know, you never know. But we're going to add another little dimension. Tim is on assignment, and I'm flying solo, and I've got a terrific guest, so it'll just be me and John Voiselle, who's the nephew of 96, Big 96. John, was that his nickname?
Yes, 96.
All right, Bill Voiselle, you're in North Carolina. You grew up in that town that he was nicknamed after. His nickname was after that town. And he was a Giant pitcher. Primarily, he made his big splash in 1944. It was wartime years, and I want to tell you about his statistics. You talk about pitchers nowadays. He pitched like 300-plus innings. He was 21 and 16, 3.02 ERA, most valuable player in the All-Star game that year, and you grew up, he was your dad's brother, obviously, and you know all about what went on. So I'm going to open up the mic, and John, I'm going to have you tell us your recollections of some of his stories and what it was like.
Thanks. He wore number 96 on his back after he went to the Braves. He wore number 17 when he was with the Giants. But Bill, he always loved the Giants. Him and Ott, it seemed like they didn't get along after his second year. When he was in 45, Ott always had a rule on 2 strikes. It was a fine if you threw one down the middle. And
right.
Johnny Hop reached outside and hit a home run, cost him the game. Back then, I think he was fined too. His fine was $250 for grouping one down the middle. I charged him $500, and that was a lot of money. It's probably about half of what people make today. But after that, him and I
absolutely. Go ahead.
Him and I just didn't seem to get along after that. But Bill had a tremendous. He was an all-star. He led the league in strikeouts.
Right.
There ain't too many pitchers today that could stand up to that kind of. But when a pitcher comes out of the game back when they played, they wondered what was wrong with you.
Right.
In other words,
right. Relief pitcher was a nasty, it was a slur. You didn't want to go to the bullpen to be a relief pitcher. You wanted to start and finish the game, and yeah, absolutely, changing times.
Hey,
was your brother?
Go ahead.
Excuse me. No, I wanted to ask you. I wanted you to continue what you were saying after he left the Giants.
After he left the Giants, he went to the Braves, and as I was saying about the number of innings pitched, he pitched a game with the with the Braves, a full game, and then he come in to relief the second game. He won both games with a doubleheader.
Oh wow, wow! And
you don't see that today.
He pitched on that 1948 Brave team, and they didn't do too badly in 1948.
No, he was Game 6 starter for the World Series.
Right. And I want you to know that two of my favorite all-time New York Giant players came from that 1948 team. Al Dark and Eddie Stanky were traded by Horace Stoneham, and basically went on to build that mini dynasty. They won in 51, and again, they won it all in 54. By then, Stanky had retired, and I think it was, I can't think of his name, Williams, the second, Davy Williams was the second baseman of the Giants.
Ricky Williams?
Davy Williams.
Yeah.
Right. What do you remember about your uncle when you were a kid?
When I was a kid, his wife always, his memorabilia, she was actually one all about memorabilia, but he always had stuff signed beside his chair. He didn't charge, and he always had mail up until the day he died. He had stuff beside his chair to sign, and he would sign it for no charge.
Right. I just, before I forget, I wanted to mention the late Charlie Fox was a good friend of mine, and he was a catcher. He managed the Giants in 71, the year of the Fox. But as a 20-year-old, grown up in New York, he was a catcher with the Giants it was either 42 or 43, and he caught your uncle. And that was one hell of a pitching staff. It had Carl Hubble on it, and like I say, it was pretty cool.
In 44, when they won the division, when he won the Most Valuable Rookie Award, Hubble was kind of winding down his career. Their record wasn't good. Matter of fact, I was shocked that Bill won as many games as they did because they were a last place team. That's one reason he pitched so many innings, I believe.
Right. Did your dad grow up as an athlete too? Did he pitch or play ball?
They were Carolina lead ball, textile league. He played textile league ball.
Oh, okay. And but he never went on from there.
Now I had another, Bill's brother. He played semi-pro ball. He played semi-pro ball in North Carolina.
That's another uncle of yours.
Yeah, and I also had a third brother, and he played textile league ball.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Anything he passed on to you that you'd pass on to your kids in the way of going around the track, living life, this, that, and the other thing?
The pictures and stuff that I got, there's a lot of stories to them. Matter of fact, there's a picture when Hank Greenberg was coaching Pittsburgh, and I got a picture of a fight where the ref umpire was holding him back, and he was a cut up. But Hot, when they had a team meeting. Bill was bad of hearing. Bill couldn't hear very good. And they was having a team meeting. Bill was a country western. And he was singing in the shower. Well, Ox was having a meeting in there, and Bill interrupted their meeting singing. So yeah, that was kind of funny.
That's kind of funny. We're talking about the number one answer to the crossword puzzle was 3 down, New York Giant outfielder. And that's always Ott, O-T-T. It fits into crossword puzzles for some reason or another fantastically. And as a matter of fact, Mel Ott was the first person, as far as I remember, first national leaguer to hit 500 home runs. So, and he managed the Giants for a long time. And I couldn't help but ask you at the end. Your uncle finished up with the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah.
Any memories about that?
Well, one interesting thing is the team members. But his favorite, he was roommates with Johnny Mize. And he was also, and Warren Spahn was with Boston, he was roommates with. And I remember Bill he went to Oklahoma City visiting his wife's family from Oklahoma City. And Spahn was there signing. And the old roomies, they got a big get-together out in Oklahoma City before he died. So that was interesting.
Pretty cool, John. Hey, what you got going for yourself? This is a show where we get to everybody's selfless self-promotion. You have anything you'd like to talk about and let the folks in North Carolina know what's going on?
No. A couple of years ago I did a museum, Bill Museum in a little town in 96 at Depot. I accumulated quite a bit. I filled up a room full of stuff accumulated by me over the years. That was interesting. But, no, I don't have too much going on. I love baseball.
Okay.
I was talking to somebody today. The game ain't changed. It's just gotten more about money.
Right, absolutely.
But Bill used to say, only kind of drugs we ever took was BCs. Well, people didn't talk too much about drugs back in those days. If you go to the doctor today, it costs you a fortune just for medicine.
Yeah. When did your uncle pass away?
About 10 years ago. I can't tell you the exact date I got it. I got it in my stuff.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't get into this earlier and had a chance to speak to him. Yeah, it's just one of my regrets.
He was talking about one of your favorite Braves. It was Alvin Dart. Well, I went to see Alvin before he died, and he was a good guy. I went and visited with him, and he signed some of my stuff, and we chit-chatted. Alvin was a real good guy.
Well, Alvin was complicated, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Alvin was a good religious man.
That's what I say. And I hope he rests in peace. I think he was a mixed bag, as they say, in life. And that's the way it goes. We all are. Life is, folks are a shade of gray. There's no black and white, no right or wrong. That's the way it is. Hey, John, you're a pleasure, and I hope we get a chance to chat again someday. Learned a lot about your uncle, feel much more knowledgeable. And thanks for being a baseball fan, continuing it all. You're still a Giant fan, I understand.
Yes, I love the Braves, Giants. And I'm rooting for the Cubs.
Okay, well, that's 3 teams you're rooting for, and that's pretty. But I'll bet you don't like the White Sox.
No, I don't care too much for the White Sox.
All right, I just took a guess, John. Keep up with me on Facebook, and I'll do the same with you. And I want you to.
There's another thing. If anybody that's listening gets a chance, check out my website.
Absolutely. And would you give us the website? That's what I mean. What is the web? Oh, you mean the site on Facebook?
Yes, on Facebook.
Absolutely.
And
John Voiselle, and he's a friend of mine. You can reach him through me. You can, and you're officially a friend of the show.
Yes.
Thank you, my friend. Take care and keep the South going. You know, there's some rumor that those Confederate dollars may be worth something after all.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Ralph.
All right.
Yes,
I think good. Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.